All right, Dave, we are back once again. It's Wednesday, 11 a.m. Central Time, and you're here with us. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I was a little bit concerned that I was going back to the Hurricane Maria days that I experienced in Puerto Rico. I've
Well,
had a ton of power outages here in Memphis, still off for many of the people here because of this last ice storm.
oh boy. So you have power. Everything's good. It looks like you got internet too.
Luckily, we did not get affected. Our power and internet stayed up, but there are people in the city 7 days now. Now, we were without it for 50, so they've got a ways to go. And I do have a lot of compassion for people. Luckily, you are getting some warmer days now, so they get some relief from those cold nights. But I remember Puerto Rico, it was hot and it didn't get cool off at night. And you just sweat through it for those 50 days until we finally got that power back on.
I remember after Hurricane Maria came through, we were trying to get a hold of you for a few days, and finally we got a call from you. You said you were I think you were under the interstate or somewhere, all huddled with other people who were trying to make calls close to a cell phone tower.
Yeah, that's what we had to do. We had to go to the freeway. There were a couple of cell phone towers that were still up and working, and everyone just kind of huddled around the edges of the freeway there and made our phone calls and then went back to life. And again, I have a lot of compassion. People talk about, oh, I don't want to wait for 3.5 hours. Well, we did it day in and day out for months. It was just the reality of what it was. And I hope I don't have to do it again. That was a once in a lifetime experience, but I guess we know what it is if that ever happens here in this area.
Well, Dave, I'm glad you're here with us live. You have power, you have internet, because it would be a very boring show if it was just me. So thanks for being here and participating with us today.
Yeah, you could do a baking show or something. Just teach everybody about some of the new stuff that you're working on, some of the things you've been baking and cooking lately.
Yeah, I don't know if that would work out very well, but hey, I guess we could always give it a shot if things came that bad.
People have extra time in retirement, a great hobby for people to get involved with.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone here that's joining us live. Thank you for being with us. And for those watching on replay, we hope you enjoy this segment today. Again, we're talking all about retirement. We want you to come and ask your retirement questions as we are here. That's what we're here to do, Dave, is here to talk about retirement, answer questions, and really dive into some of these great topics. And tell me again, as we get started, what the passion about this year is, because I think we've talked about it a lot, but I don't think people understand what your focus is for this new year.
Our goal is to get people to take action. We want them to act upon the things that we're teaching, to start making those changes that need to be made. Now, we realize for many people, it's going to take a lot of effort. There's going to be a lot that's going to need to be done, but it all starts somewhere. And this is the year we want people to get that retirement plan started, start working towards that safe and secure retirement.
And Dave, to get going, we have a list of questions that have been submitted to us or we've had saved here. And so if you're watching live, go ahead and submit your retirement question. We'll be able to pop that in here as well. But Dave, let me get to my first question that I have here. This is from Jackson, is 55 and would like to retire early at 60. What can he do now to prepare himself for his early retirement?
Jackson, very exciting to see that you're wanting to get out of the workforce early. I know there are many people that are in your shoes. We're seeing a lot of people because of the fire community. They're saying, hey, we're going to do it even earlier than that, maybe 50, 45, somewhere in there. Biggest thing that I would say is make sure you have a plan that is going to deal with the risks you're going to face during that 40, 50 years that you'll have left. You could easily live past age 100, especially as we start looking at life expectancies and where they're heading. You need to make sure you have a plan that addresses that, because what I often and too often see, people get out of the workforce early, spend down all their money. They don't realize how expensive things are going to be. You're not going to be able to get Medicare until you get age 65. Social Security may not kick in for you if you do it right until age 70. So you've got to spend down a lot of money, and this can create issues long-term if you don't have a plan put together.
And Dave, if you retire early, every day is a Saturday from that point on. And you've talked about that with longevity. It sounds like you're going to be spending a lot of money in retirement.
People do. What we find, especially in those initial years, if you're a traveler, if you're someone that wants to see the world, want to get out, be able to do things, maybe you've got a lot of hobbies. Talk about you baking. I know you do a lot of that, and cooking different meals and stuff. There's a cost to get all of that put together. So if someone's doing that, maybe they're an artist, they're going to buy a lot of materials, a lot of different products to get them into those hobbies that maybe they didn't have before. So it can be very expensive, especially during those early years.
And one of the things you brought up too, Dave, is Medicare, making sure that you can always qualify. You can't qualify till 65. But what about making sure from Jackson from 60 to 65? What's he going to do, and how's he going to be able to afford that healthcare? That's going to be through the roof.
He will be able to get onto the exchange and be able to get marketplace insurance. He will also probably qualify for some benefits, some reduction of premiums there, depending on where his income is, but he's got to take that in consideration. I don't know what his insurance has looked like before, but many of us have had employer-based insurance leading up to this. And if that's being taken away, maybe an extra, $500 to $600, whatever the case may be, depending on health, maybe $1,000 a month that he's going to have to pay.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Dave, let's jump to my next question here. This is Bob and Kenna. So they're 63 and 65. They're looking at Medicare and have a long-term care policy if should they need it. But is there anything else that may help with medical costs during retirement?
Yes, they are definitely going to need to look at either a Medicare Advantage plan or a Medicare supplemental plan. Both of those are structured to help cover some of the gaps that exist in Medicare, but they're going to have to pick one or the other of those two.
And Dave, when we look at this, is that we look at this by saying long-term care policy, should they need it? Do people really need this? Is this something we need to look at?
35% of those going into retirement are going to have a long-term care event. They're going to become permanently disabled. Hard to believe it's that high of a percentage. One of the biggest risks we're going to face during our lifetime. And that number comes from when it happens. So average life expectancy, 70% of you who live to that long, going to have a long-term care event. Well, obviously half the population's passed away before average life expectancy. So when we divide it by two, what we get is 35%, very high probability we're going to have issues there.
And Dave, as we talk about medical costs, how expensive is this if we're looking into retirement?
It's getting worse. Their estimations for now are $150,000 for a male, $135,000 for a female, and these are going to go up. When we look at the cost of medicine, it is skyrocketing. We had 7% inflation last year, highest we've had, I think, in 40 years. But yet, when we look at medical costs, even from Medicare side, over a 14% increase. It was double what we were looking at from an overall inflation standpoint. So definitely something we've got to consider, definitely something that's got to be looked at, and very important that they figure this out so they have the money to cover it once they get there.
David, it seems like we're talking a lot about people who are trying to retire early or get out of the workforce force early. What happens if we get out too early? What do we do with all of that extra time? And you talk about longevity. There's a lot of things we have to look at that we have to kind of put into place. And really, we have to plan if we're going to be looking at this.
CR, it's not just a financial issue either. When we look at it, we talk a lot about the finances that, hey, you've got a lot of years there that you've got to figure out life. It's an emotional problem for many, many people. I see it all the time. People think I've done working. I've worked for 30, 40 years, maybe. My body's wore out. I'm tired. They jump into that retirement. And again, every day's a Saturday. They've got all the free time in the world. Pretty soon they start having a lot of problems. I've seen people resort to using drugs even into retirement. Hard to believe that at that point they're bored, didn't know what to do. See people, their health goes haywire. All of a sudden they're putting on a lot of pounds because they're sitting around the house all day. All kinds of things can happen. Now these are things we got to prepare for. Obviously got the others that travel the world, do all kinds of fun things. They love retirement because they stay very active, but there can be a lot of emotional problems with people if they haven't planned for it and they haven't figured out what that is going to look like. What's every day going to be for me now that I have 7 days a week that I have to plan out?
I like that you bring that up because even for when you have younger kids like you do versus everyone else, David, you have to be in a routine. If you get out of a routine, it just feels like chaos happens. And I feel like that needs to happen, even maybe in retirement or different things we have to look at also.
It does. And it's amazing how quickly we can get bored. I know that's one of my big issues, that I love to stay busy. I love to always be doing things. But again, after a week or 2 weeks, maybe a month, maybe it's a year, all of a sudden life's changed. And the problem is it's very difficult at that age to go back into the workforce. Pretty easy to stay in there, oftentimes very easy to even keep a part-time job going into retirement. But once you're in your 60s and you've been out for a year or two, not a lot of companies are willing to take that risk of bringing you back on, especially if you're a high income earner. Now, if you want to go work at Walmart or Home Depot or somewhere like that, maybe you can get a job there working with those type of businesses, but not a lot of big high executive jobs for people once they've got out.
Very great point. Well, Dave, I just want to encourage all those that are with us live to go ahead and submit their retirement questions. I mean, we're talking all different topics. We're here and talking about Medicare. We'll be talking about Social Security. We talk about long-term care. We talk about all these different topics. So if you have something in mind that you want to discuss, go ahead and throw it in the comments there, and we'll do our best to put that in between all of our other questions here. All right, Dave, let's get over to our next one that I have. This is Curtis. He's age 57. He lost his wife last year. Can he claim her Social Security benefits now, or should he wait?
He's not going to be able to unless there are children in the home that he's caring for that are under the age of 16. If there are still some young kids in the house, he would be able to claim some benefits there. If not, he's going to have to wait until at least age 60. Now, there are options to start with her survivor benefits, and then he could switch with his own later on if he chose to do so. But at age 57, there would be nothing there for him unless you had those young kids still.
Now, Dave, you teach many webinars. So we have, 14 or 15, I think, in total right now. One of the ones you really dive into deep is the Foundation for a Secure Retirement, and you really dive into Social Security. And I want to have you talk a little bit about that, because we get so many questions in that area where I think it's overwhelming. It's frustrating to a lot of people. And I feel like you're helping make it plain and simple, which a lot of people need, but there's still a lot of complexity to it.
There is a ton of complexity. In fact, that class currently is a 4-hour class. We talk about Social Security, Medicare, long-term care, and elder abuse. I've taken all this information, consolidated it. We're finding that maybe isn't the best way to teach it. In fact, we're going back and saying, look, 4 hours, we can cover Social Security and Medicare in that 4 hours because they're the two areas we get the most questions on. Hey, let's take those other two out and create a separate webinar for elder abuse and long-term care. But it is something that's complex. It's interesting because I obviously get in conversations with a lot of people on the side, and to be a Social Security expert is one thing. We have people out there, that's all they do. To be a Medicare expert, that's one thing. That is all you do. But then to take both of those, combine them, and add all the 10 or 13 other topics we talk about, sometimes it can be overwhelming. And we do our best to make sure we get the information they need and feel very comfortable they're getting accurate information, but it is a challenge sometimes.
And I want to encourage you that if you are interested in that class, go ahead and jump over to retirementriskadvisors.com/events. You can go and find all of these webinars that we're talking about. Because again, as we dive into Social Security and dive into Medicare, like you said, long-term care and elder abuse, there's a lot of, there's so many options out there and so many things to learn. You're never going to get it all. I think, right, what we're just trying to say is make sure you're prepared and make sure you know exactly what direction you're headed, and not just wait until you're there and say, okay, now what?
And the problem is for most of us, even when you look at these classes, there's probably only maybe 25% of it that really applies to us. The problem is how do we break out that 25%? So we really got to go through the process and sometimes sort through a bunch of information that's really not going to apply to us to get down to the information that really is critical for ourselves. And it's hard to do that. We're very, in my opinion, our webinar is does a good job overviewing everything. We cover a ton of material inside of there. But even if you go to Social Security Administration's webpage, even if you go to the webpage for Medicare, hard to get that information. Yesterday I was going back and forth with a gentleman that was claiming some of our teachings were incorrect, and they weren't. They were actually accurate, but as even for someone like me, very hard to find the information on the Social Security website itself to back that up. Obviously, there's other top educators that back that up. I was able to find all kinds of articles to send to him, but it can be tough even for people like myself to get the information that we need on specific topics.
Dave, one of the topics that we get a lot of questions on is annuities. That's something that a lot of people get questions on there. And that's something that we're looking at as well. So we're gonna get to our comments here coming up here, Dave. But I wanted to bring this one up here before we dive into that. Is we have Susie and Lewis, 49 and 55, would love to leave behind inheritance for their only child. Could this be done with an annuity?
It can. There are annuities that can be taken out to the life of another individual. Not always, not necessarily the best option. Many times what we would look at is a life insurance policy that would allow that full amount to be transferred over, but these can happen. Rockefeller, some of the other large families that many of us are aware of have used annuities to allow that income to just go from generation to generation.
And Dave, as we talk about annuities, we bring this up all of the time. Is an annuity best for everyone?
Absolutely not. We are finding that more and more people are able to use them because of the flexibility. They're not what an annuity was 10 years ago. Many of you have negative comment thoughts about them because they were very expensive. You had variable products that if the market went down, you lost all your money. Those are not today's annuities. There are so many great products out there that are designed to help you. Some are asset based, where you're just going to grow the income. You're never going to even take money out of that product. Others are going to be income based, where, yeah, you're going to click that income on. I love Tom Hegna's idea. And I was listening to another expert out there that was saying they'd done the same thing. And it's something I'm putting into place myself, but it's those staggered annuities. You look at it and say, hey, look, if I've got 10, 11, 12 annuities, I can turn those on as I need them. If I need them, great. You know what? We had inflation. We had something happen. Maybe my spending ended up going up. I turn on an extra annuity. If I don't, hey, leave them for the kids. Let those assets continue to be there for my beneficiaries once I'm gone.
I think that is great advice, Dave. And I love to hear that because, again, annuities aren't for everyone. But again, if you do it right, it's going to, like you said, it's going to be very beneficial. But that means we have to take care of that. But before we get into that, Dave, I just wanted to have Gary's jumping on saying, good morning, Dave and CR from San Francisco. I'm sure it's probably beautiful, warm, and not rainy one bit over there.
Yeah. Good morning, Gary. Good to have you with us again.
All right, Dave. So I've got a big question in here. I'm going to see if I can get it up here again. This time I'll get it on the screen. So I hope you can get through all of this, Dave, but we're going to try our best here. Gary's saying, my 39-year-old millennial daughter has owned an IUL for 4 years. She maxes out her annual employee Roth 401k contribution and her Roth IRA every year. For the past 3 years, she has maxed out her mega backdoor Roth IRA. However, she only has sufficient funds in her Roth Solo K to purchase either residential real estate or an annuity, but not both. So she will probably purchase an additional IUL with her taxable bucket. What are your thoughts on deploying her Roth Solo K funds?
Yeah, great question, Gary. And sorry, Sierra, I got excited there and popped that up a little earlier than we wanted to get to that point. But as you look at it, our site is we want principal protected assets for our age as a percentage of 100. So you've got a situation here where she's 39, fairly young, and she's saving substantial amounts for retirement. When I look at it, I'm not necessarily against using a Roth Solo 401k to buy some real estate, to be able to diversify out into those other assets when it sounds like she's got a lot of other principal protected assets. She's got some extra money she may be able to buy another IUL with. So I would look at it from that standpoint. Again, not against either one of those. Maybe buy that real estate and then later on, if she can find a piece that's affordable, not concerned that the market's going down, and then later on be able to sell that off, and at that point buy an annuity later on that she could implement further into her retirement.
And Gary, we hope that answers your questions. If not, we're always here for follow-up as well. And Dave, the one thing I do want to talk about.
Hey, really quick, CR, one other thing, Gary, that I just wanted to let you know. I'm not sure if you got the message back, but I did look at the question you had from last week where you're asking about the order of contributions. And I think maybe talking about this same daughter where she is in a situation as, hey, can we do the backdoor Roth without doing the employee contribution? Employee contribution has to come first. I'd mentioned I thought that's the way it worked. I did some research, confirmed that. So must do the employee contribution first. You'll get your employer matches, and then you can do that backdoor Roth contribution on that 401k.
And Dave, the one thing I wanted to bring up that I really appreciate that Gary talks about is he has taught his kids well. His kids are out killing it. They're crushing it right now. They're saving for their retirement. They're young. And I feel like a lot of times, Dave, we're always so worried about just making sure what we're leaving behind versus what we're teaching them to be able to do on their own.
Absolutely. And Gary, I've got 7 kids. I might start shipping them your way. So I hope you got a big enough house. We'll just start moving them in and you can start giving them some financial advice and getting them on track.
And he said, Dave, thanks for your research. He really appreciates that. Gary is somebody we always love to see here, Gary. So thanks for being with us live, especially through Facebook. If you're here through YouTube as well, we're glad you're with us. All right, Dave. So let's jump in. Let's see. He had one more comment I missed over. He said, I don't want to leave anything to my kids.
Hey, we're on the same boat. He and I are on the same boat. Now, I do have a special needs daughter, and that's going to change some because of that now, but we're in the process of adopting. But I agree. I'm going to spend that money down and hopefully bounce the check to the undertaker when I leave.
Yeah. I definitely appreciate that. And I love the fact that we're here to help educate not only for ourselves, but for other generations as well as they're coming through. All right, Dave, let's get down to my next question here. Kaylee's a CPA and needs help with her clients who have a heavy tax deferred retirement portfolio. What should she recommend for them to change that?
One of the first things that I would recommend is making sure that there's not a bunch more money going into it. And this can be a hard conversation because because I've had it with many people. As tax preparers and as tax professionals, we like to get the tax bill down. That's what people oftentimes are paying us for. And so now all of a sudden you're having this discussion saying, look, this isn't a tax deduction, it's a tax deferral. And we think taxes are going up. So yeah, I think you need to pay some money now and take that risk off the table so you don't have to pay more money in the future. That can be a very hard conversation unless it's done correctly. And it's going to require some time to educate, or they're going to say, hey, I'll just go down the street. Joe's telling me that I only have to pay $3,000 in tax. You're telling me I got to pay $5,000. But that's where I would start. And then I would get with an advisor that can put a plan together to figure out how quickly the rest of that money can be moved over. And that is going to require a conversation with the client. What's their risk, their tax rate risk concerns? Do they think taxes are going up like we do? Do they think they're going to double as David Walker believes they will? Or are they somewhere in between? And that's important because that's going to help determine how quick this money's moved over, what their income's going to look like in retirement versus now. A lot of planning, but it's really getting a professional involved that can help with that process and help them better understand the risk you're trying to take off the table.
And Dave, we primarily focus on educating CPAs. And one of the things I wanted to bring up is make sure as we're out educating, we want to make sure we're giving the best advice. So like you said, that if they believe taxes are really going to go up, I think we have to make sure we're giving them the right information. And I love what you do is you continually go out and find this information and you update. You're not just giving information you've had for years past, but you're always on the lookout for things that are changing and new. So that way you could give the proper advice for those who really need it.
And sometimes things don't come to pass for a while. I will tell you that as well. I believe we're going to have a market crash. There's all kinds of signs out there that it's going to happen. Those of us that have that belief oftentimes are getting called on it. But it's no different than this tax situation. When we go back even 3 years ago, people thought, taxes surely can't go up. They're not going to be higher. Well, now everyone's looking at it and overwhelmingly saying taxes are going to have to go up. Same thing as we look at the market. So sometimes it requires some patience. Sometimes it requires us not being the most popular guy in the room. People saying, look, you're a doomsday person. You're trying to predict that we're going to have problems. That's not it at all. I'm very optimistic. I believe we've got a great future ahead of us, but there are things we've got to do to prepare for that. And if we put things in place, then, hey, if things go south, no big deal. We're where we need to be. If they go up, no big deal. We put ourselves where we need to be and we get the upside as well.
Dave, history tends to repeat itself. So if we go back and look at some of the tax rates over the last, I don't know, 50 years, so what are we looking at as far as how much did things change that we need to look at as we're looking at our future?
Taxes have only been lower than they are today 4 other times, and that's going clear back to 1913 when taxes were first brought about. They've been as high as 94%. You can imagine being in that bracket. But when we look back, there's from an average standpoint, somewhere between 50 and 70%. So as we look to the future, there's really only two options we have. We can cut spending, or we can increase taxes, or do some combination of the two. Obviously, they both work together. Spending's not being cut. I was shocked the other day. I've always used 2030 as my date, saying, hey, that's when we're going to have issues. Social Security is going to start having issues by 2033. Medicare started having issues 2026. National debt's going to be at $60 trillion. Well, guess what, CR? New projections, 2028, we're going to be at $60 trillion, double where we are now. That's 6 years from now. We're going to hit that. And some are saying it may even be sooner than that. So we've got a big freight train bearing down upon us, and we've just got to do our best to prepare now. And like you mentioned before with Gary, I love that he's getting his kids prepared, getting them money in a lot of tax-free vehicles so they don't have to worry. Again, taxes 60, 70%, and you're getting your money tax-free. Well, feel sorry for the guy down the street, but not really affecting me and my family that much.
And Dave, we're going to be talking about Social Security in my next question. And the question I'm going to bring up is Social Security going to, you're talking it's coming soon, but is it just going to go away?
It's not. It is the most like program the government has. It is going to have financial issues 2033. Now, currently, if you looked at it, about $3 trillion in the trust fund, very well financed. 2021 is when we first start having losses. We're going to continue those losses until 2033. If we keep having this inflation, guess what? It's going to run out earlier because 5.9%, that means more money's coming out of the trust fund. But the reality of it is, because it's so well liked and because there are a number of fixes out there, it will get fixed. And those of you that are our age, I mean, again, if you're 50, it's really not good, shouldn't affect you that much. What we look back in the past, what it's going to affect is our kids. You know what? They may not be able to retire at what our full retirement age is, which for me is 67. They may have to wait till 70 because of life expectancy. They may not get those delayed retirement credits. Those may not exist when we get there, but it's not the people that are already approaching that. That's not the way the government works. They don't just immediately cut it off and say, yeah, sorry, you were 64. You didn't quite make the cutoff. You've been born a month earlier. We would have solved this for you, but it's too bad.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Dave. And let's pull up our question here. Asia and her husband, Colin, they're both 70, want to claim their Social Security benefits and begin their semi-retirement. Will working part-time impact their Social Security?
The only way it will is if they have earnings that are going to be higher than the 35 highest years of earnings they had during the working years. So once you reach full retirement age, you can work all you want and it's not going to reduce your benefits, but those years get added into your overall calculation. And the government uses your top 35 years inflation adjusted to figure out what your monthly payment is going to be. So if you took a situation and maybe Asia was out working and Colin was staying home raising the kids most of the time, and he didn't have that many work credits, and now he's worked there once kids got raised for a decade or so, and now saying, look, I'll do some semi part-time work once I get into retirement, he may see some benefits. But most people, not really. Once you get to that point, your income, especially if you're part-time, is not going to be high enough to really affect you that much.
Dave, the problem I have with this question is, what is semi-retirement? Because I feel like that just doesn't work well for me.
Yeah, either you're retired or you're not retired. It's where does that fall? And I don't know. It's something different for everyone. Obviously, what's part-time work? Is part-time work 1 day a week? Is part-time work 4 days a week? If you're tax prepared and you've been used to working 60 or 70 hours most of your life, part-time work may be 40 hours a week. So I don't know, CR, that's a good question.
And I also look at that too, is maybe there's side hustles. When we get into retirement, there's a lot of things that we have as hobbies, but we want to help other people to learn about it or do. And so I could see this even turning into, trying to create other income. And I think that's another thing people have to look at, especially.
Yeah, it's amazing out there how many things there are that could earn you $10, $20, $30 a day. I mean, if you need that kind of money, and now they may require, depending on where you live, a car to be able to do some of those. Maybe it requires some type of bicycle or something else. We talk about it and all the time ourselves, the Financial Panther. I just love that guy. I still follow him. When we were doing some financial literacy stuff, we got introduced to the guy, but he's a young guy. I think he's got 1 or 2 kids now, but I'll tell you, that guy makes money off of everything he does. He's just so creative. It's like, look, I got to fly to some other city. I'll take an extra package with me. Obviously he's got to know what's in there. I'll make sure once I get there, I deliver it to someone else. If I'm going to the grocery store, guess what? I'm going to do a delivery on my e-bike on my way there, or pick something up at the store and take it to somebody else. I mean, just super cool how he's figured out to make some extra money to provide for his family.
And Dave, I love, because you had him on your podcast and you guys talked about all the different things he went through, even talking about his background when he was, as a lawyer, and then the things he's done to change that. And I think that's a really impressive way to say, you can always hustle, you can always find opportunities, but I think that's the one thing we need to look at, is making sure as we're getting into retirement, all the different options that are still there.
And I think it brings up another point that we've all got to look at, is sheer happiness. What is it that makes us happy? You take that individual who's an attorney, had an opportunity to make hundreds of thousands of dollars, probably pretty secure, pretty easy to do based upon the need for legal services and stuff now. We said that's not really who I am. And how he got there, I have no idea if it was pushed by his parents or something he chose to do. But he said, look, I want to go do this other thing, and I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to make sure we have enough money to make it work. And from everything I've seen, super happy individual. I think we've got to look at it the same way. Money is not what's going to bring that happiness. What's going to bring the happiness is your contentment with the things that you're doing.
Yeah, I love that, Dave. I think that's the one thing. You even talked about the mental health aspect and making sure we get into retirement that we're going to be mentally sharp, making sure that we're doing things that we love. Because if not, I can't imagine if you're in retirement or close to retirement and you're doing a job you absolutely hate, it would just be miserable.
And if it's all on money, there's never enough. I mean, that's part of the problem as well. I was talking to one of our advisors the other day, and just sat down with someone that had $12 million, and they were like on a 7 of feeling like they were secure for the retirement. Well, that's pretty crazy. And we see it with people all the time, that if that's been your focus, look, I'm never going to have enough money. Someone always has more than me. I'm never going to be able to get to that point. That we just got to take that off the table. And we've got to understand too, again, retirement is about income, not about assets. You could have a $12 million, and if it's not producing any income, yeah, your retirement may not be that great. You could have $1 million that's in an annuity or other products giving you guaranteed income, and you spend 10% less than that every year. Look, I love my retirement. I got a little extra to go spend on the grandkids, do other things, but I don't really have to worry about it.
And I appreciate that. Dave, we are out of time, but I do want to pull up one webinar that we haven't been able to talk about yet. Let me get it on the screen here. Dun, 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 dun. Roth
Yes.
IRAs. It's here, Dave, finally.
Yes, this is thanks. Primarily, there are other people as well, but thanks to Gary. He's been asking for this, I think, Gary, for over a year now. It's finally out. We're very excited. We are going to cover a lot of information during that presentation. I will talk a little bit about 401ks. We will talk about mega backdoor Roths. We'll talk about traditional, regular backdoor Roths, but very excited for that webinar.
Gary, I hope you're signed up for this. This is going to be a great one. And I know we have this scheduled out for a few months, but make sure you get signed up for this. This is an amazing webinar. It's going to be a great time. And if you have other things, Dave, I love the fact that Gary was able to inspire you with some others to get these out there. So I would love that if there's other webinars people love to learn about, especially in retirement, because that's what we're here to educate and teach you on. But it's such a valuable concept to be able to say, hey, let's get together as a group. Let's talk about things that we need to work on and let's get better with them.
Yeah, and we've got so much great content coming out. We just had our evolving retirement law course that we released. We've got a new one as well that we just launched, how to protect your retirement assets against the next crash. Something that, again, many of us are looking at. We've got a new one coming up that I'm super excited about that focuses on women only. Now, obviously, men are welcome to attend, and it'll be taught by me, but it's going to focus on the issues women are dealing with because they're not getting the service and the love they need from a retirement perspective. And so we'll cover that. So look for new webinars coming out. I think we've got probably one a month for the next 5 or 6 months that we've scheduled. We're hoping to do a couple of day event once we hit November. So this is going to be a year for us. So we're taking action on creating new content. Hope you take action on the content we provide to implement into your retirement.
I love that. And Dave, before we go, Gary said, hey, one more suggestion. You need a webinar on purchasing real estate with the solo. Okay.
That one might take me 2 years. You're completely right. I get asked questions about it all the time. The problem is there's such a small segment of the population that this is going to benefit that it's hard for us to do a complete webinar. But I appreciate the recommendation. Maybe something we put together. Again, I do get asked a lot of questions on it because people don't understand how to use it effectively, how to put it together, what the rules and the guidelines are. But you can get very little information off of our self-directed class that we have now. But definitely put that in our arsenal, Gary. Again, over the next 2 years, we got a lot of stuff coming out. It will be a while.
And again, I want to thank everyone that was with us live today and those on replay. We're so grateful that you're with us every week. We love having you here, especially as we're getting into education and talking about all these different topics. Don't forget. Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing, something we could do for Gary and CR. I'll throw it out here live so we can look at it. What we could do is a podcast, get an expert in that deals with this, maybe get a podcast put together for him over the next couple of months that he would be able to take. They last about 20 minutes, but we get some great information from someone that's an expert in this area that could really help give some light on some things that you'd need to do.
That's a great idea. I'll make sure I put that on my list, Gary, and we'll see if we can get that. Then I'll let you know as soon as we get that going. All right. Well, for everyone else, again, remember, we're always here every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. So come ahead and join us each time. Make sure you come with your retirement questions. And if you have questions that you didn't get a chance to submit today, you can always do that at retirementriskadvisors.com and go to the Contact Us page, and you can submit your retirement question, much like we've had all of these questions here, and we'll be able to go through all of those. So again, thank you so much for being here, and catch us on our podcast every Friday. You can catch that. The Retirement Risk Show. You can listen to that anytime, Android, Apple, anything you have. And then again, all the other webinars at retirementriskadvisors.com as well. All right, everyone, thank you so much for being here. My tongue and my mouth are not working, so we're going to go. But thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.